Hello and welcome to the Luv Doc podcast with hosts Waldo Wachewski and Ophelia Brewski.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're tackling a listener question, and it's a pretty relatable one, I think, especially if you're living in a city like Austin.
Yeah, for sure.
Our listener recently moved from NYC to Austin, and they're expecting a baby soon, which is so exciting. But there's a bit of a snag. Her husband refuses to learn to drive. He's citing environmental concerns and some anxiety about getting behind the wheel, which leaves our listener as the sole driver.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a challenge, especially with a little one on the way.
Exactly. And, we all know what traffic can be like in Austin.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try to help our listener navigate this situation.
Absolutely.
We've got some really interesting sources to draw from today. We've got an article about self-driving cars that are already being tested in Austin.
Interesting.
And we've also got some advice from the Luv Doc, who actually suggests adult driving lessons at a go-kart track.
A go-kart track?
I know, right? It sounds a little crazy, but we'll get to that.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So let's start with those self-driving cars. I mean, that sounds like it could be the perfect solution, right?
It does seem like it could be a game changer.
The Luv Doc even jokes that the Waymo self-driving taxis in Austin are probably better drivers than a lot of Austinites.
Haha, yeah, I've heard that too.
So does this mean our listener's husband could be off the hook soon?
Well, self-driving cars definitely have the potential to address a lot of the concerns that your husband has mentioned, especially the environmental impact.
Right.
With reduced emissions and better fuel efficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think it's important to remember that this technology is still in its early stages. Experts are saying it could be another 5 to 10 years before self-driving cars become widely available and affordable.
5 to 10 years.
Yeah. And there are still some technological and regulatory hurdles to overcome.
So not exactly a quick fix.
Right. Not in the immediate future.
Okay, so self-driving cars might not be the answer right now. What about the Luv Doc's suggestion of starting with go-karts? I have to admit, I chuckled when I read that.
Yeah, it does sound a bit unconventional.
But could there be some logic behind the humor?
There might be. It's important to remember that learning to drive can be a very stressful experience.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Especially for someone with anxiety.
Right.
And a go-kart track offers a very controlled and low-stakes environment.
I see what you mean.
It could be a good way for him to build some basic skills and gain confidence before venturing out onto actual roads.
Okay, but wouldn't an adult feel a bit silly taking driving lessons on a go-kart track?
Well,
I mean, wouldn't that just add to the anxiety?
I can see how it might feel a little awkward at first.
Right.
But I think the benefits of having that safe and pressure-free space to learn could outweigh any initial self-consciousness.
So it's kind of like training wheels for adults.
Exactly.
I kind of love that idea. And it actually ties into the Luv Doc's emphasis on practice.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
But even a little bit of driving practice make a difference?
Absolutely. Repetition is key to mastering any skill, and driving is no exception.
That's true.
Even if your husband could learn to drive short distances or for specific situations,
Right.
It could significantly lighten your load and offer more flexibility for your family.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Holy crap! You're psychotically obsessed with the Luv Doc, but can't think of a flashy gauche way to share your obsession with the world? Stop thinking and make a beeline for the Luv Doc's home sweet home on the interwebs, thepleasurecraft.com, where you can find a veritable treasure trove of sick merch that will make even your coolest friends super gel. Honestly, I don't know why you didn't already think of this yourself, but you're welcome. Have fun on the Pleasure Craft. It was made just for you. Let me spell it out for you one more time. www.thepleasurecraft.com.
But we can't ignore the anxiety aspect.
Right.
You mentioned that's a big factor for your husband.
Of course.
What are some ways to address that?
Well, the Luv Doc recommends looking into safe driving courses that are specifically designed for people with anxiety.
Safe driving courses for anxious drivers. That's interesting.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. So these courses, they go beyond just teaching the mechanics of driving. They actually incorporate techniques from cognitive behavioral therapy to help drivers manage their anxieties.
Oh, wow. So it's like therapy and driving lessons all rolled into one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool.
They might involve things like relaxation exercises or gradual exposure to traffic and strategies for dealing with challenging situations on the road.
So it's not just about learning to drive, it's about learning to manage the emotional side of it, too.
Exactly. It's about equipping him with the tools to feel safer and more confident behind the wheel.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess it's not just about his individual comfort either, right?
Right. It's also about overall road safety.
Oh, for sure. A driver who's less anxious is going to be a safer driver.
Absolutely.
And especially with a baby on the way, safety has to be a top priority.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the baby, the Luv Doc does mention the impending arrival as a potential motivator for your husband to learn to drive.
Yeah, it's a big life change.
Right.
And it's important to approach this with sensitivity, of course.
Oh,
it's not about pressuring him,
Right.
but about presenting a compelling reason to reconsider.
Okay.
Think of it as a shared responsibility.
So instead of it being a point of contention,
Right.
it becomes a shared goal.
Precisely, parenthood involves compromise, and stepping outside of comfort zones and driving could be one of those necessary adjustments.
Yeah.
Imagine the freedom and flexibility it could provide for your family,
Yeah.
sharing driving duties.
Right.
Taking the baby for a calming drive.
I love that.
Having the peace of mind knowing that either of you can drive in an emergency.
Right.
It's about creating a support system that works for both of you, both practically and emotionally.
That's a really beautiful way to frame it. It shifts the focus from will he learn to drive to how can we best prepare for the transportation needs of our growing family.
Exactly. It encourages a more collaborative and solution-oriented discussion.
I like that.
Instead of focusing on individual anxieties, you can explore different options together.
So it's not just about him learning to drive. It's about finding the best way to meet your family's needs.
Exactly.
What are some other options that they could consider?
Well, they could explore ride-sharing services or public transportation.
Okay.
Or even just strategize their errands and appointments to minimize driving stress. Maybe
Right.
there are carpools they could join, or perhaps family or friends could help out with rides occasionally.
Yeah, those are all good ideas.
It's about thinking creatively and finding a system that works for both of them.
That's great advice. Sometimes it's easy to get stuck in a rut and not realize all the different possibilities that are out there.
Absolutely.
So many good options to think about. It sounds like they've got a lot to work with.
They do. And, it's great that they're thinking ahead and trying to figure this out before the baby arrives.
Right. Definitely better to be proactive than reactive.
Absolutely. And, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have. Where do you think we should leave our listener?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your husband about his fears and concerns.
Right.
And listen to his perspective with empathy.
That's such good advice. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in our own point of view and forget to really listen to the other person.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. Every situation is unique.
It's about finding what works best for both of you and your growing family.
You've got this. We're rooting for you both. And hey, maybe someday we'll all be cruising around in those self-driving cars.
Haha, maybe so.
But until then, we're here to help you navigate those real-life challenges. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
To read the column that spawned this podcast, go to austinchronicle.com/columns/the Luv Doc. There are probably worse things to do with your time, right?